would like to invite Jeremy to the stage. Also will be joining us Philippe Jimenez, Sevil Peach actually, Sevil, so you can come back. Hermen Jan van Rey and Martijn Roordink. And we have somebody you didn't see before, is Pierluigi Rondoni from Ernst & Young. I'd like to invite him too.
One front?
Jeremy, you will take over from here.
I can't help but designing the place.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I realise that we're the only thing standing between you and lunch now, but having had two fantastic case studies, Hermen and Philippe talking about the Dutch railways and Regus, and Martijn and Sevil, this series of spaces schemes in the Netherlands, which are kind of introducing the spatial side of new ways of working, workplaces without desks, but with very human, soft, pleasurable spaces. So you've heard from 4 of our panelists, but you've not heard from the 5th. Pierluigi is real estate leader at Ernst & Young. So I'd like to start with you. You've listened to the 2 major case studies, and I suppose, I think the question for Ernst & Young is probably why? You know, why new ways of working? Perhaps you'd like to respond to the 4 presenters.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, for your question.
I can't move this forward, I'm sorry, I'm pushing, but it's not moving.
This is not flexible?
It isn't, no.
Okay, not easy in this moment to provide you new information. A lot of components about a new way of working have been pointed out during the presentation. I would like to share with you some discussion that we had during the coffee break. The question was, why all the service companies like Ernst & Young, Accenture, KPMG, they have so many buildings, so many square meters. People normally, they have to work on the client side. Why you don't change the way on which you are working and occupying your buildings? And this is a very good question, very good question. Let me start saying that every time that we analyze the utilization of our workstations, the utilization is no more than 60%. 60% is the result if you analyze by rank, if you analyze by unit, if you analyze by service line. No more than 60%, which means that is really a must to reduce this part that we are not using. I'm fully convinced that also in the remaining 60%, we have good opportunities to reduce. We still need a part of our real estate and our buildings. Why we need? We need because also our clients are working on the same direction, so they're asking us to move our people from the client side to our offices. We need because technology is supporting distributed work, but also from the client point of view. Easy example, if during the merger and the acquisition, the due diligence normally was made in a data room on the client side, right now are made on virtual data room on the internet, on the web, which means that we can work on our office. Nevertheless, face-to-face is still something that we need. But for sure, we are changing. All the services and consulting companies are changing to occupy and to apply different way to work, because this is also in order to support the business performances, in order to create positive impact on cost. I'm just thinking about travel cost, I'm thinking about real estate cost. In order to increase the productivity of our people, and we can discuss what does it mean, but for sure in order to increase the productivity of our people, in order to increase, and this is mainly about distributed work, in order to increase our capacity to provide first-class services to our client, and in order, which is one of the main components, to improve the life balance of our people, and so as a consequence to be able to attract and to retain talent. So all the service companies are moving with different approach, but basically in a different environment. So this brings at the end to why we are moving in this direction, which was the question, and the answer simply is to support the business performances.
Okay, well, thank you, Pierluigi. So you've really got a sense now of the positioning of all our panelists. Can I throw this straight open to the audience? Questions for anybody or everybody on the panel? Who'd like to kick off? Yeah, so there's a gentleman there, and then we'll come to you down on the front. So, yeah, gentleman in the black jacket. Yeah.
My name is Sanjeev, work for Rolls-Royce. You just mentioned about productivity at Ernst & Young. So how do you measure? What is productivity for Ernst & Young?
Good, difficult question. Thank you. Productivity, there is in a service company a very easy way to measure. And the easy way is the ratio between chargeable hours, chargeable to clients, and not chargeable hours. But the other way to manage productivity is to analyze the direct cost. And in a service company, direct costs are related to human resources. So one way to increase productivity, for example, is to leverage on global talent hub, on specialized center. Stupid example, maybe that I am preparing, collecting information in order to provide to a client a cash flow and a net present value of some different alternatives for a given building. I can send all my information in the evening of my time, Milan time in my case, to Bangalore. In Bangalore, I have a global talent hub that is able to compute for me the net present value and to prepare a perfect cash flow. In the morning, the cash flow and the net present value are ready on my desk. This is another example about productivity.
Okay, so there's a gentleman at the front here. Yeah, and then we'll go to Philippe.
So Robert from Cisco. So far, I haven't heard too much about ergonomics. So how people work, and even if you think about working councils, even in Cisco, we have to answer the question, if we have people working at Regus, what is the working style, how are the chairs? Because at the end of the day, if they get wrist injuries or whatever, we're still liable. So what is your point of view of how that's evolving and how that might be working? And then the second question is, how's then also the next way of working of how, for example, in Ernst & Young, everything becomes swipeable. So about big screens and where people actually are collaborating and writing on virtual screens and those kind of things, I haven't seen too much about that as well, which in my view is going to happen dramatically in the next 2 years. So those two, because even the swiping, for those of you who read the papers in last week, there's this new RSI, that swiping and all that other stuff is causing a lot of injuries again. So again, fantastic new opportunities. At the same time, economics and new ways of working are also causing some interesting new challenges. Any thoughts?
And go on. What we see is that during a day you have all kind of production levels. So you come in, you're opening your iPad, having a cup of coffee, then you go to your office or to a meeting environment. So within that level, you should measure your productivity during a day, not only swiping or sitting out behind your computer, but really be productive, and maybe you should manage on a daily level how you can be and sitting behind the computer. The other part is that if you are relaxed and you're sitting in a really nice environment, the chance that you're having your ergonomics or your swiping finger is about stress. The difficulty about stress is not only a measurement, it's one of the parts. If you're not having any stress or less stress, the chance you're having RSI is lower. The difficulty, of course, we fulfill to the ergonomics, to the chances of all the different parts where you can work. It's your choice. So, for example, we fulfill for 95% SMEs. We have big corporates who become member having smaller offices. They have higher requirements. They can fulfill them, but they will take their own furniture. So they have their own office environment with their own tables coming up and down. But I think mainly it's 95% is stress.
You know something? Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Being probably more
You
qualified
may.
on this than the panel maybe. I've been doing this for years, and it's getting worse and worse, and the chair has to do 14, 15, 16, 18. I mean, if they can add more, they add more to this chair. I sit on a four-legged chair in my office. You know, do I have a back problem? No. What do I do to eliminate that? I get up, I do things, I vary what I do in the course of a day. We're in a very nanny world of, you know, people don't anymore respect that we have brain to actually operate our body, mind, soul, everything else. That this has become a big corporate, this is the way it is, and if I get a wrist, you know, use your brains to actually say, okay, I had enough of the screen, now I'm going to go and do something else, and so on. To me, variable work, variable spaces, variable environment is the way to resolve it. The fact that these people are sitting on these 14 action chairs does not necessarily give them a backache or not. It still gives a backache. The problem is they're just sitting there and looking at the screen for 8 hours. That's where the problem lies. So I don't give any rubbish bins underneath the desks when we design offices. I convince the clients that actually this is not a good idea, because what you need to do is to encourage people to actually move away from the desk, away from the screen as much as they can, because what really helps your back is to be able to be straight up every half an hour or 45 minutes and then be in a sitting position. So in a situation like spaces, it doesn't really matter because it's a social communal space. It's the person who's working there, it's their choice. In a corporate environment, it's different. Unfortunately, all these companies have to adhere to it. And yes, we adhere to it to a certain degree by giving them the right chairs and so on, but what we do is create spaces that still enable people to be active and not sedentary at a desk all the time. That's how we deal with that in a more, I think, socially responsible way than furniture doing it for you.
Okay, thank you. There's a question at the back there, Philippe. Yeah, black polo neck. Then we'll come to you. Yeah.
So I've learned a lot from Worktech events over the last 6 or 7 years, and a lot of the focus is typically on the larger kind of organizations and buildings. A lot of these things I have addressed in my organization. The one thing that I'm now missing out on, and maybe I didn't attend all the Worktechs, is what are we doing on the home working level? I got people coming up to me at this moment to say, Philippe, I'm going to build a new house, and actually it looks like me and my wife are both going to work from home several days a week. I mean, what's the kind of suggestion? What's the level orientation, inspiration? Should we be having facilities in the bedroom? I mean, last week in the Wall Street Journal, there was a whole article on new beds. No, there was a whole article in the Wall Street Journal last week in the US on newly designed beds that have all kinds of facilities, his and hers and all that kind of stuff. There was a whole article last week in the Wall Street Journal again in the US on working in your garden, right? Should I have my shed? So, I mean, is anybody in the panel or in the room have provided guidelines or suggestions or recommendations on how the new generation of home working can be recommended by guidelines or by designs? I'm interested in having that.
Okay, working from home panel.
I'm very happy to answer, but I don't want to be the only person who's talking here, you know. But bedrooms, no. I mean, I think we're all having serious sexual problems probably anyway because of the technology.
Sevil, the fastest selling bed in America at the moment is the one with they put electric sockets into the frame so that you can plug your devices in.
But isn't that sad? I'd much rather be screwing than working.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what's the matter with people? You know, I went to ballet. I was telling Martijn, you know, last week I went to ballet. And we were sort of sitting on the side in a box, and then there was the interval. And I mean, the sooner the curtain closed, it was like everybody, as if like the button got pressed and everybody got their phones out, because I'm like looking at it from the top with all these screens, and they're going like this. It's Saturday night. It's like 9 o'clock in the evening. What the hell are you doing? You know, and if our bedrooms are also polluted by technology, you know, what chance have we got to you know, to be loving and, you know, stroking each other and things like this?
Well, we go to spaces for that.
No. The next thing is we're going to put the bedroom in the space.
Okay, we got a question here.
I think this is a great conversation because, I mean, I myself am an architect. My name is Ruben Smith. I work for studios in DC.
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't expect answers at Worktech.
But this discussion starts to evolve between kind of the emotional aspects and kind of the business drivers, whereas the way I see things develop, and in my experience, that those are not like opposite drivers at all. And Sevil, you were alluding to it a little bit with just the whole ergonomic way of working in a workspace and making people more productive and effective. But if the whole technological evolution is allowing individuals to be appreciated and stimulated to create their own, contribute their own knowledge and constantly develop it by learning from others and teaching others. The past, where the larger office dictated how everybody had to work. You sat that way, worked at that desk, and this is the process that you have to follow. Whereas we're going towards a work environment where we're developing knowledge, we're developing people to learn more, and because that's the only way we can adapt to change. And what's interesting to me as an architect is that the emotional aspects of how you work in a work environment. I mean, we talked about why do we still go to work, but I think it's not about decorating an office. It's about actually making a building work, because you can put all the technology into it, but if people refuse to get up from their lazy butts and walk another way, it's not going to work. So I think design and the way that we experience space in terms of inspiring people, has a big function in making new buildings, but especially old buildings work. And I was very excited to see some of the projects that you were doing, because especially in the Dutch market where, well, let's say Amsterdam, 20% of the offices are vacant. I mean, how do you deal with the future of an office? It's not in new buildings anymore, increasingly. So I don't know, I feel like today there's a lot of talk about technology, but I like to see that we bridge gaps between the experience of our spaces with the technology and how that really starts to change the way that we communicate with one another.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your comment. If we just come back to Philippe's point, if I could just ask Pierluigi, are you encouraging more of your Ernst & Young people to work from home, or do you discourage it?
We are encouraging. Obviously, we have to consider that each country is different with respect to another one. The way on which we can promote home working in Moscow is completely different with respect to Poland, and is different with respect to UKI. In Moscow, connection in some area is still a problem if you work from home. In Poland, there is a problem about the labor law. The employer is responsible about the safety of the person at home. So, answering to the question, very difficult to provide a standard metric, a kind of catalog about how the home office has to be organized. What we are preparing, recognize that one size doesn't fit for all, but is a baseline about technologies that we have to provide to the part-timer or full-timer home workers. But the other point that we have to consider is that we have a lot of young people in our companies. As a consequence, sometimes home working is not possible because they share a flat in 5 young graduates and they are not in the position to work at home. Said that, baseline for information technology could be prepared. We don't believe to be in the position to prepare a kind of catalog from an architectural point of view. Answering, if I can, to the other question,
Sure.
just shortly, I believe that a good way to bridge technology with people and with inspiration of the people is the way on which we use our spaces, which is more about occupancy rules than about, let's say, space plan. Space plan has to allow occupancy rules. I'm simply referring to activity-based and free address approach. Activity-based solve also partially the ergonomics part, because you can move in different environment, formal and informal, touchdown, just in time, normal workstation during the day, which help not only your back, because chairs could help, but help also your brain in try to be a little bit more relaxed and try to be a little bit less stressed.
Okay, thank you very much. Philippe, are you seeing a combination of home working and using the kind of spaces that you and Hermen, described? Are you seeing a rise of home working in the thinking of corporates?
No, actually we don't. Actually, home working is definitely a flexible way of working, but we're not very much in favor, obviously. And we think that, according to this study we made last year in our white paper called Agile Working, that Philippe just spoke about, and V-Working, 3V, sorry. We think that there are about 2% of corporate people working from home, and we don't think that's really the place that is really growing, or the way of working is really growing. First, because it generates a lot of isolation. People need to work with other people. It also generates distraction. You talk about the people sharing, young people sharing their apartments. There is also physical constraints. Very often the house or the apartment doesn't have the space to work comfortably, and also doesn't provide always IT infrastructure. But again, working from home is like working from the main office. It's just a fixed place, but people are mobile. And if they travel, if they need to visit clients around the city, around the country, whatever, they need to go out from home. And that then generates a lot of commuting. And what we advocate is to work flexible, which means working from any place, anywhere, and just moving from a place to the other. It could be in a Regus center for corporate people, but it could be in a Starbucks coffee, in a hotel, or library, wherever it fits the best for people. Students or journalists, maybe they may be happy for a Starbucks coffee or library, and a corporate person needs more sophisticated and elaborated services and equipment. So it really depends on who we are talking about. But also, who is funding the office? If it's self-funded, probably the person may go to more simpler places or services, or may stay at home. And if the company covers the cost and needs more services, or also need image, or need specific IT devices, they'll probably go to a Regus center.
Okay, thank you. We've got time for one more question. So the gentleman on the front there. Just wait for the mic. Sorry, did I miss somebody at the back?
Okay. My name is Klaus Sander from UniCredit Group, and I have a question because I had a little bit the how can I say, impression that when you are doing buildings that you want to, how can I say, locate all kind of facilities, services, let's say, features that may be needed during a time into one building. We have seen the gym, the lounge style, whatever, cafe. I also see a trend, let's say, the Googles of this world to really keep the people like in a ghetto for 24 hours, versus what we are a little bit, let's say, looking for, and maybe it's a particular Italian style, to move into locations where we have, how can I say, a mixed use environment or neighborhood, and to connect a little bit to the community. So not to ghettoize ourselves, but also, how can I say, emphasize a little bit our people to go outside and to move what you mentioned in terms of ergonomics. I just want to ask the panel, what is your feeling? How is the market? How are the people moving forward into this direction? Because I see these two, I don't know if trend or whatever, but these two alternatives, and I would be very much curious to learn from you what you think will be the future in these two scenarios.
Do we reply one? Every single person? Shall we do that way?
No, we don't have time for that. If you could keep your comments very, very succinct, thanks, because we're, yeah.
I think there's many ways of doing it, and it doesn't fit everybody. We are going to develop and evolve in different ways. People don't like changes, companies also, but everything is going to happen slowly. Technology happens fast, but the changes in people and companies are going to happen slowly. That's one. Second is, whichever way we work, I think we're going to have to come to the reality of sustainability and ecology. And a lot of decisions on how we work is going to be related to that, so it's quite a political situation, I think, that we're in, that we need to address. So everything that Philippe is saying has to happen, not because it's the best way to work necessarily, but I think we need to be considering and respecting what's happening to the world globally overall, and stop building and travel, etc., as much as we can.
Okay, thank you. So we're just going to have one final, we're in extra time. So the gentleman here.
My name's Dave Savage. I run the Customer Solutions Center at Vodafone here in the Netherlands, and I've had over 100, 110 different discussions with different companies, with directors, with IT managers, and that type of thing. What typically happens, a lot of companies, the director will have an idea of let's work with a better way of working. They'll throw it over the fence to IT, and they're asked all of a sudden to have a technical perspective to change the complexion of a company and how they operate. But you're looking at functional needs, trying to meet strategic objectives, and also discuss things with HR. So you're talking about bits and bytes people, all of a sudden having to communicate with HR. They don't mix very easily, okay? My role oftentimes is to build bridges, okay? And that's what I do, and that's what we're working on, and being able to communicate. But what do you see, what I'm not seeing in any of these presentations is the dilemma in communications within companies, in communicating between IT, between management, between HR, and really going after the strategic objectives. Because I've seen many different things on the screens saying these are drivers of the industry. Let's not forget, marketing campaigns are a major driver of this industry. Because we're all here because we have a stake in the services and products that's being sold. But at the end of the day, we need to help our customers. So to the question of who works in a service industry, I would like to think we all do.
Okay. Hermen, do you want to pick up on that one? Because as an academic and writer, time to build bridges?
I'm not sure whether I understood the question completely, but yeah, it's definitely time to build bridges between IT, HR, real estate, etc. I think what I sort of, I'm just going to continue on your comment, missed in the whole lot is basically the end user of offices and IT facilities. But this is also the nature of the conference, I think. It's focusing on IT developments and how that will enable future ways of working, new ways of working, etc. It is time to build bridges, but it's also time to include, I think, the end user and what they expect. And the next generation entering the workforce will have different demands and maybe need a different working environment. And
okay.
Yeah, Sorry, I believe that is also a point of consistency about the goals. So, it is my opinion that the goal is always to support the business performances. Said that, normally we have a strong sponsorship in this kind of projects. This sponsorship is oriented in achieving the goal, and normally the goals are about people, about productivity. As a consequence, real estate and IT become the tools to support this deployment. So, how to harmonize IT, people component and real estate, I believe it is for sure one of the most difficult part of the project, and this is the reason for which we need a strong change management program as part of this kind of projects. If I correctly understood your question, and so I hope to have correctly answered.
Pierluigi and the whole panel, I think, I'm sorry, we're going to have to stop it. I'm sorry to cut you off in your prime, Philippe, but it is time to build bridges. It's also time for lunch. And I just want to thank, I think we're going to continue this over lunch. I'd like to thank Hermen, Philippe, Martijn and Sevil for their presentations, and Pierluigi Rondoni for joining the panel. I think you've heard two very vivid case studies, the Dutch Railways and Regus, and Spaces and Sevil, their collaboration producing some really interesting new landscapes for new ways of working. I'm going to hand you back to our conference chair, but can I have a round of applause for our 5 panelists? Thank you.